Women's Day on the 9th of August calls to mind the events of the historic 1956 March. This is a day of celebration of social, economic, cultural and political achievements of women. It also highlights the challenges that women still face. To help us understand the role of women in the energy sector, we're joined by Candice Moodley, who is from the Energy and Water Sector Education Training Authority. Candice, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this evening. Your personal career started off at the age of 13. You are popularly known from a children's TV program, and that spanned for about 20 years. Talk to us about the pivot into the energy sector.
Thanks, Katleho. Yes, I actually started in media at the tender age of 13. I was the youngest television presenter on a lifestyle television show at the time. And unbeknownst to me, I would many years later get into the energy sector. I actually was working with EWCETA in a personal capacity with my company, Women at Work in Communications, and I was handling their PR and communications at the time. And the opportunity arose where I was able to join them on a more permanent basis. And that has been my pivot into not only the energy and water sector, but into skills development, a sector that I'm absolutely passionate about.
So let's talk about that sector, and just in terms of the skills development. Talk to us about how the EWCETA contributes to advancing gender diversity, inclusivity, and as well as empowerment within the energy sector, particularly addressing the representation as well as the challenges that are faced by women.
Yeah, so EWCETA is, of course, the Skills Development Authority for the energy and water sector. So our mandate is really to facilitate skills development amongst not only women, but youth, the unemployed, and of course, our workers in terms of upskilling and reskilling them. Based on the way the energy sector and the water sector is transitioning. Women, though, is a very core part and a very core focus for us as EWCETA because of the gender disparity within the sector. Currently, we have about a 25% workforce that is made up of women in the energy sector. So there's definitely a need for us to change that demographic and that picture. And EWCETA is very intentional about doing that, particularly as we transition. The opportunities now for women in the energy sector is immense, with renewable energy really taking the forefront and center stage. And we really need to assist women, whether they be already within the working environment, or whether it be SMMEs and women lecturers, even at TVET colleges. So we have a number of programs, and the one we have recently just graduated is the Women Leading in the Energy Sector. It's 105 women made up of middle managers and executive managers, and we are really giving them a very strategic set of skills that will allow them to be creative, contextual leaders in South Africa and lead the energy sector to where we want it to go.
I mean, speaking of that program, it's a 12-month-long program where, like you say, 105 women participate in the work that you do and in how you try to shift the mindset and the culture of the energy sector. Are you finding any resistance in trying to catapult more women to take up some of those managerial and directorship positions within the energy sector?
I think probably there was in the past more resistance than we're encountering now. If anything, our male counterparts are very much allies in the process of gender inclusivity and empowerment. It has been very difficult, I think, for women, particularly in the management roles, to move up into senior and executive management positions, because they were obviously the gatekeepers and they were the men in the boardroom. So it was very hard to get a seat at the table. Now it's a little easier. I'm not going to say that there's less resistance, but I think men are more open to having women at the table because we bring a very unique perspective. We use our innate intuition and abilities to make very powerful decisions within the sectors we serve. And they've come to realize the benefit of having a number of women sitting around the table, assisting in strategic decision making for the country. So, just based on this program alone, 70% of the women come from ESCOM, and we have had tremendous support from the interim group executive of HR, who is Monde Bala. He is the group executive of distribution and has recently become the interim executive for HR. He was incredibly supportive of the program. He attended the graduation, and he himself has said that he's actually witnessed the transformation of his managers through our program, which is a testament to the impactfulness of programs like this one.
Are you finding that with such programs we are edging a little closer in closing that skills gap that the industry needs, and also in ensuring that we are equipping women with the right skills in order for them to be able to occupy these positions?
Yes, I do believe so. We need more programs like this, of course, and EWCTA is only capable of doing so much. Our resources are somewhat limited. Therefore, it's really important that we collaborate with the sector, with industry like ESCOM, with industries, with the IPPs, for example. And of course, there are other CETAs who are doing similar programs in their own sectors. So these programs are absolutely important, and I do believe they are somewhat closing the gap. There's still a long way to go. I mean, it's not going to be one or two programs and that's it, and all of a sudden we have, this uh, equal representation of men and women in the sector. In the energy and water sector, it's a very technical sector. So historically, it's been male dominated. Our women in the workforce, no taking away from them. They have the technical capabilities, they have the qualifications, they are engineers, they have master's degrees, PhDs. But what they lack is probably more the personal development, the personal leadership capabilities and tools that will set them apart, that will allow them to have confidence, that will allow them to speak with authority, that will allow them to confront situations in probably a different manner in which we would have before, whereas before we would have been very, probably come across as being very, I suppose, not aggressive, but, as a woman in the boardroom, we really had to stand our ground. Now we're trying to say we can do it in a more strategic way where we're not seen as being confrontational and still have our voices heard.
Of course.
So programs like this is really important. We have a long way to go, as I've said, but EWCTA is very intentional with our development of our programs, and we will not stop. This is just one of many that will be coming to the women in both the energy and water sector from EWCTA's side, of course.
I mean, you spoke of some of the lack that the women may have with regards to personal development and how they lead. What would you say are the key challenges and the systematic obstacles that women face in pursuing these careers within this male-dominated industry, especially in terms of entrepreneurship opportunities?
Well, in terms of entrepreneurship, I mean, the value chain is there and there's lots of opportunities. But once again, in the entrepreneurial space, it's male dominated. Men are generally more prone to get the business. And why that is, perhaps it's just historical challenges that we have to overcome. But I also think policy and regulation can go a long way in making it more accessible for female-owned businesses to gain these opportunities, to gain the funding, to gain the partnerships that's needed, and investment opportunities. And whereas a lot of focus, I suppose, has been placed on male-owned companies, we are now changing that narrative and saying that female-owned companies need those opportunities more if we are to have inclusive economic participation in the country, which is really what the NDP and our most of our national policies and frameworks support. So as EWCTA, that is something we're driving, building female-owned SMMEs so that they have access and opportunities within the energy space, given the where we're going in terms of the energy transition. The value chain has a lot of entry points for SMMEs, and we want to give them the tools that they need, not only the hardcore entrepreneurship skills, but the softer skills as well that will allow their businesses to flourish and become sustainable in the long run.
Most certainly. Candice, thank you so much for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you, and of course the EWC and the aspirations that they have in terms of the advancement of women within the energy space. Thank you so much for your time and for joining us this evening. That was Candice Moodley, who's the Corporate Services Executive for the Energy and Water Sector Education Training Authority.